Hey man, what you doing?
I'm trying to save some money on t-shirts online.
Well, don't you know, trying is the first step towards failure. You should just go to popthreads.com right now and use the discount code Simpsons so you can save 15% on all your t-shirt orders.
Ay caramba, these t-shirts are awesome. I just ordered the I Choo Choo Choose You shirt.
Is there a picture of a train on it?
There is a picture of a train on it, and they have a bunch of other Simpsons shirts too, as well as current television shows and movies, all at popthreads.com.
So you should choose popthreads.com.
And remember to use that discount code Simpsons so you can save 15% at checkout.
That's a lot of dough!
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes who grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and joining me once again, your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How are you today, Rich?
As always, fine and dandy like sour candy. I'm happy because you have to put up with me again for a whole other episode.
Just you. I don't have backup like I have in the past week.
Exactly. It's all me, baby. But for now, I'll throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the million poets working for a million years. It's Miles.
So we've got a couple of good episodes to talk about today. First up, we've got Homer Alone, and then we'll be diving into Bart the Lover. Homer Alone debuted on February 6, 1992, and the chalk gag was "I will not spank others," which is another one of those visuals, right? Yeah, they had some kinky spots in these episodes today. The couch gag on this one was a human pyramid with the base on the couch and Maggie, of course, on top, because she is the best Simpson.
She is the top Simpson.
For sure. We get a kind of Looney Tunes-esque, specifically like Wile E. Coyote in the Roadrunner opening, with Bart being chased by Homer. They do a fun little close-up pause on each of them where they give their like scientific name. I think Homer was like Homo neanderthalis or something like that.
Yep.
They end up breaking a lamp, and that is where we start to see what this episode is going to be about, and that is simply that Marge is overwhelmed. She sees the lamp on the ground in the mess, and she yells out to the boys, "I'm not cleaning that," but then immediately says, "Who am I kidding?" before fixing up the mess. Then she's taking care of Maggie in the kitchen while also trying to make a very complicated lunch order. I thought it was kind of cute and funny that Maggie burps just like her dad.
What I found interesting is that there's proof that Bart is a hellion and a devil because he asks for extra mustard on a sandwich, and mustard's gross by itself, but extra mustard?
Mustard
oh
is
my
awesome.
God, no. No, that's just proof that Bart's the
You
devil.
can't hate all mustard. There's too many types of mustard, so like I'm sure there's a mustard that you like.
Nope.
Well, you are the most stubborn son of a bitch I know, so I'm sure for this point on you'll avoid mustard even if it's delicious just to spite yourself.
No, I've tried different kinds over the years. There was one where towards the end with my father where he put a little bit on, and like I could stomach it a little bit. I don't like the taste of it. I'm a mayo guy.
Well, mustard won't make you fat, and mayo is not a salad ingredient for what it's worth.
Oh God, I would never do that.
For all you Midwestern listeners up there, the Marshalls of the world.
Ugh, I'm Texan, damn it.
Which means you should fucking like mustard, but that's a whole different thing. So Marge is just totally overwhelmed. She's being screamed at by both kids and Homer about their lunch orders. She finally screams out enough, one at a time, but they all keep yelling at her the same. But she does manage to fix everything because she's basically Superwoman.
Except Homer. She doesn't fix Homer's order. That's because the kids are more important, and she basically...
Well, and they're out of bologna.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was true. Sorry, she wasn't able to get Homer's, but she still made him lunch. She just didn't make the exact lunch she wanted.
The fact that there were three people screaming at her with completely different things while she's holding Maggie, or dealing with Maggie, and she actually listens to all of them individually and helps them as they're all talking at once, is incredible. That's, everyone knows out there, I'm not the biggest Marge fan, but this episode does a very, very good job of making you feel miserable for Marge. Like, I felt so bad for her in the first 5 minutes of this episode.
Very much so, and not in the same way that we will talk about with Miss Krabappel coming up in the next episode, which also makes you feel very bad for her, but this was in a completely different way, which was interesting that these episodes were side by side. But With Marge specifically, everybody was in a good mood. It was just that literally there's so much she's balancing that no one can keep it up for that long. And unfortunately, she's married to Homer, who is not going to be the best person when it comes to noticing her needs. And unfortunately, instead of seeing Marge as overwhelmed, he just keeps piling onto her list. In fact, he has an issue with his bowling ball. He got a bottle cap stuck in one of I think it was either the finger hole or the thumb hole, which cracked me up because he implied something he said made it sound like this is not the first time that's happened. So he actually asked Marge, who's already beyond herself with chores and tasks, to make an extra stop today to get her bowling ball, or to get his bowling ball fixed.
Basically, what's been going on through the entire first episode, like you said, is not that somebody's being like shat on necessarily and it's an upsetting thing. It's that Marge's family is taking her for granted. They're happy, like you said, but they don't realize that they're literally taking everything she does for granted.
Totally. Yeah, they are absolutely using her up and for everything she's worth, and her life is just very, very hectic. And no one is making it better. No, I mentioned Homer specifically, but the next scene is the kids, Marge yelling at them that they're going to miss the school bus, and they're just kind of casually up in their room like, no way, that would never happen. And sure enough, the bus leaves, and I love Bart's reaction, I'll be damned.
Bart's getting some trouble this week with cursing a few times.
Yeah, and so do his neighbors, but that's not Bart's fault. Marge actually now has another task. She has to take the kids to school on top of everything else like she already had to do, plus the bowling ball situation. And the kids are not helping in the car either. They're both just absolutely talking Marge's ear off with problems. And when they get to the school, she actually turns around and almost growls, "Get out!" It was the first time we really see the cracks that Marge is about to have in her mental status. She's losing it, man.
But to be fair, the kids are being incredibly annoying.
And Homer, all of them.
Oh my gosh! But I'm just talking about the
even
car
Maggie.
Yeah.
Even Maggie in the next episode, in the next scene, she's at the grocery store and Maggie is throwing stuff out of the cart, which I think everybody who's ever taken a toddler to a grocery store has dealt with that. I've even dealt with that. But to be fair, I taught my nephews that.
Maggie's not even a toddler yet either.
True, yeah, she's an infant for sure. But yeah, in addition to that, she's got the grocery store. She goes to Nick's bowling supplies or whatever it was, but turns out it's the wrong Nick's, and she has to go to the other side of town. And then that Nick is like, yeah, I haven't actually done that service in years. I can't remember. He said something really funny. I haven't plucked out a hole in years.
He said, like, I don't even know why he told you to come over here.
Exactly. In the car, even, she's getting, there's jackhammers going off right by her. The radio ad is for stress headaches.
I think the radio ad was the jackhammer part, I thought.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah,
they were talking? Okay, I thought there was both,
jackhammer
actually.
Noises on the radio. It might have been.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
And then they do a classic crank call on the radio station she's listened to, which is the worst thing I've ever heard in terms of crank calls, because they call a man and basically tell him that his wife is dead. And this is when Marge just absolutely loses it. She actually pulls to a stop, blocking both lanes of the Springfield Memorial Bridge, and she takes the keys out of the ignition and she just sits there with the baby. And the police show up, and they're just not getting through to her. She is just staying in the car, blocking all sorts of traffic.
Well, at first it was that bus that was behind her with all the, like, Shakespearean-dressed actors, and the bus driver gets out and goes and taps on the window, and she does, like, the demonic look again, and just goes like, and the bus driver just turns around and walks away.
Speaking of bus drivers, Otto takes advantage of the situation. He just climbs up on top of the bus to tan while they're in traffic.
You know, I do have one issue with the scene that's about to take place here. We see Arnie Pie in the sky, which I don't remember if... I know in like the first season or second season they had an Arnie Pie in the sky, but it wasn't Arnie Pie in the sky, it was somebody else. They have the news team is there on the helicopter filming the incident on the bridge here. It's Arnie Pie in the sky in his helicopter by himself, and in the very next scene, Kent Brockman is reporting from the helicopter. How the fuck did he get in that helicopter? Arnie Pie was already on site. He was already on site.
How to go do the Channel 6 sky harness?
Yeah, I understand why they had to do it. It was because they had to do a live broadcast so Homer could see what was going on, so he knew something was up. But from a storytelling standpoint, how the fuck did he get in that helicopter?
I never catch these things like you do. That's a valid point. I really enjoyed Wiggum's response when he shows up and the other cops are already there, and he, basically like, yeah, she won't move. And Wiggum's like, did you flash your lights at her? yeah, we tried that. I'm out of ideas.
Did you notice that Wiggum's hair is finally blue in this episode?
Oh, is this the first time it changed? I did not catch that.
Especially after Toby mentioned it last week, I think on the well, Radio Bart or whatever. Yeah, Radio Bart. His hair was still black, but his hair was blue in this episode, so this might be the point where Wiggum is finally being established. Wiggum. Yeah.
Nice. You already mentioned it, but Kent Brockman showed up and was trying to get a live interview by dangling off the helicopter in a harness. I thought that was good. But one of my favorite lines in this, it's not the best line, but it's a good one. Homer is at work, and they're seeing this reported on the news, and in typical Homer fashion, he starts to make fun of whoever's married to that poor broad. He says something along the lines of, she must not be getting it good enough at home. Right then, Marge rolls down the window to reveal that it is, in fact, his wife, and he, of course, goes, "Doe!"
Which we all know is a lie, because that's the only reason Marge is staying with Homer is because he's good in bed. We've established that numerous times.
It's a good theory. I think there might be more to it than just the sex, but, what do I know?
Marge is actually psychotic and doesn't understand the situation.
Well, Homer goes to the scene and is going to try to help get Marge out. I love when he shows up. They're like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm her husband." And everybody's like, "Oh, that explains it."
Wait, what does the police tape say, too, in that scene? I completely forgot it. It says, like, distressed mother or something like that on the police tape.
Distraught woman, something like that. Yeah. It doesn't say caution or crime scene. It just, it's warning that there's a psychotic woman on the premise, basically. Psychotic from stress.
Oh.
So Homer gets the megaphone from Wiggum, and I love they're like, yeah, if you use this to try to talk her out, just try not to get your mouth on it or anything. I thought that was really funny. But Homer convinces Marge to get out by basically saying that if you come out, I promise to do whatever it takes to make it better. And she agrees, and she decides to get out of the car. Only she's immediately arrested by Wiggum and put in cuffs and taken to jail. There's even a scene where one of the lady cops is taking her mugshot, and she's like, "Hey, Marge, off the record, I just want you to know all the women down here really understand what you're going through." And when Marge is like, "Oh, that's nice. Do you think you could loosen these cuffs?" She's just like, "Hell no."
She goes from, like, sympathetic to, like, completely authoritative, which is no.
Right. But this leads to a scene between Mayor Quimby and Chief Wiggum where they're arguing over if Marge should be in jail. Quimby says it would absolutely kill his female voters, and Wiggum doesn't care because she broke the law and needs to be arrested.
I actually really like this exchange. As Wiggum starts out the conversation, he says, "Don't you worry, Mr. Mayor. This little bird will be cracking rocks by the end of the week." And Quimby says, "Wiggum, you glorified night watchman, let her go." He says, "But she broke the law. Thanks for the civics lesson. Now listen to me. If Marge Simpson goes to jail, I can kiss the chick votes goodbye. And if I go down, you're going to break my fall." And Wiggum says, "Word to the wise, Quimby. Don't write checks your butt can't cash." And then he says, "Hear me loud and clear, Wiggum. You bite me, I'll bite back. You talk the talk, Quimby, but do you walk the walk?" And I just love that exchange because it's like straight out of a fucking movie, right?
It totally is. And I like the very, very next scene right after the walk bit is Quimby actually is announcing Marge's freedom. And then as all the women are applauding, he kind of like leans over to his assistant and is like, just like trained seals.
Yeah.
It's a great scene that's both funny and shows how corrupt politics is.
Exactly. It's all,
so great.
It's all about getting the re-election, right?
Absolutely. Which, I mean, to be fair, it's been working for 28 years, so he should keep it up.
That's the great part about Quimby's character is that he's almost, you never see an individual episode about Mayor Quimby. Have you thought about that? Like, you always see maybe some side stories, but I don't think there's ever been an actual episode just about Mayor Quimby.
There's one with his son, isn't there? There's one where they're, like, dealing with something with his son, I thought. Yeah, it looks
like his son accosted a chef where Bart's hiding under the table. That's chowder. Like that one. But that's about his son.
That's
not about him.
Yep, that's not really about him. That's interesting.
But he's all about re-election. We all know that.
Well, on this day, he declares it Marge Simpson Day. It cuts to the Simpsons' bedroom where Marge and Homer are in bed watching the news report. And Homer basically is like, all's good that ends well, and is ready to go off to sleep. In fact, he almost immediately starts snoring. Marge is still wide-eyed and wide awake, and immediately a commercial comes on for Rancho Relaxo, which is Springfield's only 2-star resort spa.
What I love is the fact that the TV ad says, "Remember, you can't spell relaxo without relax." It's like, come on, dude.
We then get a conversation between Homer and Marge about Marge wanting to take a vacation and needing to relax. And Homer says, "Marge, that'll never work. You know how our kids are. They're always in the back. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And hell, I'm no day at the beach either. Marge, can I have another sandwich? Marge, can I have another sandwich?"
Which he literally was saying at the beginning of the episode.
I love how honest of a portrayal this. I mean, Homer, if nothing else, Homer knows who he is. He knows himself. He's self-aware, if not completely selfish. Just at least he knows who he is. It's kind of funny.
But even this conversation with him being honest about himself is a selfish reason.
Totally. Absolutely. And he doesn't get it until Marge spells it out for him that Marge wants a vacation from everything, including him and the kids. A vacation for herself, which Homer is immediately like, "Oh no, you want to get a divorce?" And Marge has to explain that that's not what that means.
What I like is when they're talking about their family vacations, Homer, or Marge or Homer, I can't remember which one, they hold up, it was Homer, he holds up the picture of him holding Bart upside down over a bottomless pit in a cavern.
Yeah, remember the Mystic Caverns? Yeah, that was really good. I also really like, as soon as Marge assures Homer that she doesn't want a divorce, Homer basically is like, "Oh, so you swear you're coming back?" And as soon as Marge agrees, he's like, "Okay then," and he just goes to sleep.
Yep.
As long as you're coming back.
Got what he wanted.
Yep. So they arrange for Patty and Selma to take the kids, but once Bart and Lisa are in the car, Maggie will not let go of the house.
Magically not let go of the house, you mean?
Right? She has magical strength right there, yeah.
Or Jedi super strength, whatever you want to say.
I really love that Lisa in the backseat of the car is like, "I wish I would have thought of that."
But it gets Maggie her way, though. Like, Maggie knows what she's doing. She is the smartest Simpson. Smart on both ends, because she knows she doesn't want to go to Patty and Selma's.
She does get what she wants to an extent, and I really love this exchange. In fact, it's probably my favorite line in the episode. When Maggie refuses to let go of the house, Patty and Selma are like making fun of the fact that he can't take care of a kid. They say something along the lines of he'll probably trade her for a beer and a nudie magazine. Homer gets defensive and is like, "Hey, I can take care of my kid." And at that point, he drops her, but then catches her and goes, "See, I caught her on the first bounce." That killed me. I actually had to pause the show because I couldn't stop laughing, and I couldn't hear anything that was going on at that point. I love that justification, but to be fair, he did catch her on the first bounce.
Literally rubber baby buggy bumper.
We then see a scene at the train station where Homer is saying goodbye to Marge, and as Marge says goodbye, Homer starts to freak out and is like, "Oh no, where's all my clean underwear?" And Marge says, "It's in the drawer." And "How often do I need to change Maggie?" "Anytime she needs it." "How do I use the pressure cooker?" "You don't." And then we get Homer trying to parent all by himself, just Maggie and him. And Maggie very clearly wants her mom.
Yep. Sees her everywhere she looks, points at pictures, tries to grab the picture. There's gonna be a lot of magical Maggie moments in this episode, actually.
And meanwhile, Lisa and Bart are absolutely miserable at Patty and Selma's. They find out that they're going to be literally sleeping in the same bed as each of them, in the same room, and they warn that they heard that they snore, which we all know is a understatement. I like this line when Lisa finishes her lunch and is like, "I think I'm really tired. I'm just gonna hit the hay."
She didn't finish it. She didn't even. They had like tongue sandwiches.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, she didn't even want the lunch.
You could see a literal tongue hanging out of each sandwich.
Yeah, she pushes away the disgusting lunch and is like, "Oh boy, I'm really tired. I think I'm gonna go hit the hay." Her aunt replies, "It's 12:30 in the afternoon," and Lisa is like, "I'm aware of what time it is."
I love there in a minute when her and Bart are in the bedroom, or it might have been when they're in the kitchen. I forgot where it's at. But Bart's upset because Patty or Selma says that the one Bart sleeping with says that they snore a lot. And Lisa says, "You think you know fear? I've seen them naked."
Oh, and then they actually hold hands under the table, like as if they're clutching each other in fear. Yeah, I like that scene a lot. Meanwhile, it's the exact opposite for Marge. Marge could not be happier, and she's being introduced to her new home for the weekend by none other than Troy McClure, who is playing his best role yet. Marge's virtual tour guide of Rancho Relaxo.
You might remember me from certain things as this or this, or this and this, but this is my best role yet. Your tour guide for Rancho Relaxo.
For as much fun as Marge is having relaxing, Homer is overwhelmed just taking care of the one child. And when he's trying to feed her, he keeps trying to demonstrate that, like, see, Maggie, the food is yummy. And then he ends up eating the entire jar of baby food. And you see he's done this at least 10 or so times.
He really likes baby food, but Homer will eat anything, to be fair. But, like, he's enjoying it way too much.
Way too much. He also can't seem to function a diaper without a staple gun. And when he tries to do a puppet show for Maggie, it ends in disaster when Santa's little helper just ends up attacking the puppets.
It feels like we're starting to get in the point where this episode I had a few times where I had to slow the episode down because there's a lot of things that happen, like bang, bang, bang. And it's not an overall great episode, but like they're starting to hit that like comedy gold where they fire on all cylinders for a brief moment or two.
I thought this was a really good episode. This is another one I think I enjoyed more as an adult than I did as a kid. Not that I didn't like it as a kid. I think what it was is this episode has a really nice split to it that the kids can really, really relate to the kid storyline, because I think everybody had at least one relative or person that they had to stay with as a kid where it was just like everything was kind of awful. And, you know, they didn't have like any toys or video games or anything like that. And you were like sleeping on like a shitty bed or couch or something. And like it just wasn't like a cool place to be. I think everyone experienced that to some extent, maybe. And I could relate to that as a child. And now seeing all of the like overwhelmed wife and stuff, I totally understand that. My wife puts up with a lot. So I can respect that storyline a lot more than I think I could as a child.
Well, see, I thought this had another good balance in the writing where it's almost like a metaphor for order and chaos, where you have the split. You have the scenes with Marge having like her peace and tranquility and getting what she needs, and then you get the exact opposite of that. And obviously, if you watch the episode, you know this, but like to actually think about it from a storytelling standpoint, it's another example of being very smartly written, because you get that complete opposite that kind of balances out the episode.
I agree. But things with The Simpsons are still very unbalanced at this point, and that is due to the fact that while Marge is getting a massage at her spa, which I actually really liked while the guy was massaging her, it's actually kind of creepy in a way, but as he's rubbing her down, he says, "It's times like these that I'm really glad I flunked out of Mexican med school."
Yeah, that's one of those things where like you hear it as a kid and like you might understand it a little bit, but again, like you said, as an adult, you're like, whoa, now he's basically coming on to Marge.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt.
Mimosa.
Well, Homer calls in for reinforcements at the house and gets Uncle Barney to come by, but Barney is not the best choice in this field. And in fact, I really dug the idea that when Barney gets there, he sees Maggie and he's like, "Oh boy, I haven't seen little Bart here in a while."
I had an issue with Barney's animation in this scene. And I didn't write it down as a note, but it's been logged in my brain since I watched it, because I thought maybe it's just his fat bulging on his face. But his face has a bottom line on it, like under his chin, where it makes it look like he's wearing an undershirt to his button-up shirt. But like you can see the curly cues on his chest hair. But like the way he was drawn in the scene, it made it look like he had an undershirt on, and it was just, I don't know why, it just stood out to me, and it was kind of bothering me a little bit. But I'm pretty sure in the future, I mean, it wasn't round like the bottom of his chin. It was like a straight line under his neck, and it just looked
interesting. I didn't catch that.
It's just something that just stood out to me. Maybe I'm just crazy, but it caught me off guard a little bit, and it was kind of taking my attention away.
Interesting. I didn't catch that at all.
That's kind of the shit I look for usually. So.
Yeah. What I noticed was how much of a mess the house was in. Like I said, they invited Barney over, and Barney had basically passed out in his own filth of like beer cans and food.
He goes, somebody stinks, when he holds Maggie, and he goes, oh, it's me.
Oh, that's me. Oh, yeah, that's really bad, actually. But I just feel bad for Marge, because, like, she's going to this relaxation thing, and as soon as she walks through the door, it's, like, all going to be for nothing, because she's going to immediately have this huge mess to clean up. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, after Homer puts Maggie down, though, she's very, very upset, and she very clearly wants Marge. And she actually escapes her crib and crawls through this mess I was just talking about to get out of the house, and she takes off. First, she sees like a hedge sticking over the fence, which draws her to the front yard, but that was just a plant. And then she sees a lot of things and ended up not being Marge.
She goes everywhere she knows Marge would be. She goes to the salon. She goes to the
everywhere.
Bowling ball place. Like, she has a lot of very magical Maggie moments in this, especially like considering how far she was traveling.
Are you suggesting she may have apparated?
Yeah, or she Jedi mind tricked a taxi driver into driving her around. I mean, we didn't see those parts, so it's really a toss-up at that point. But I want to talk about real quick the scene before this. It showed Bart and Lisa again over at Patty and Selma's, and everyone's seen the scene where Bart's playing with one of their bras and yelling "Ay caramba," and then he holds that gun up and Lisa says, "Oh, that's a blackhead gun." But right after that, Patty and Selma walk into the room, and as they walk into the room, you hear them go, "Best MacGyver ever." And I just started laughing my ass off because
every MacGyver is the same.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, I forgot that's like one of the staples of their characters. I don't remember if they've ever brought it up before this episode, actually. Like, we all know MacGyver is a very, very big deal to both them and their mother.
In the Silent Bob episode we've got coming up towards the end of this season, it's going to be a very big factor.
Yeah. I always think about the episode where the critic pays a visit, and Bart skateboards by the front of his house, and the critic's hung by his underwear on the gutter, and Bart goes, "You must have badmouthed MacGyver." Because he tells Patty and Selma, MacGyver's gay, because Homer or Bart whispers that to him. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up real quick. That might be the first instance where they established that
they like MacGyver. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, cool observation. So Homer goes to Maggie's room for her 9 a.m. feeding at 11:45 the next morning. And that's when he first realizes Maggie is gone. He immediately gets Barney to start helping him look for Maggie, and there's a scene I actually really like. First of all, Homer thinks he sees Maggie underneath Barney, but really he's just sleeping on a conch shell. And then immediately after that, while Barney's helping look for Maggie, he's like reaching under the concrete foundation thinking, I think I got her, and he ends up pulling out a water pipe. And it just makes you think, how stupid is Barney that he confused that with a baby, but it was still a funny scene.
And how expensive is that repair going to be?
I can tell you from experience with some bad plumbing issues I had not too long ago that shit's not going to be cheap.
Oh.
Yeah, it sucks. So Homer calls the Lost Baby hotline, and the whole music for this fucking company, or whatever it is, this branch, is Baby Come Back.
Baby Come Back! I'd like the Department of Missing Babies. Just hearing that.
I never caught those little musical cues. Like, they do that a lot. As a kid, I did not catch these. I'll be the first to admit, but they do little things with the songs more often than I ever realized, and I love those little jokes.
To be fair, I've noticed that song a lot more since the first Transformers movie, when Megan Fox is walking off and Bumblebee starts playing that song to get her to come back. That's just me, but that makes the song stand out in my mind a little more.
That makes sense.
Shout out to Megan Fox.
Well, while Marge is relaxing in a tub ordering room service that includes things like a hot fudge sundae, chocolate chip cheesecake, and a bottle of tequila, Homer is looking everywhere for Maggie, and he actually goes to Patty and Selma's, claiming he wants to see the kids. Really, he's just asking if they've seen their sister. I love when either Patty or Selma answers the door, and when she says, "Hold on, I'll go get them," she basically tells Homer he better not steal any light bulbs. And at that moment, Homer gets this maybe I should face.
I love that when Bart and Lisa come to the door, they're like, "Dad!" and they immediately latch onto his legs like they're not going to let go, but they're not as strong as Maggie, so it doesn't work.
And it's almost immediately whenever they're like, yeah, we haven't seen her, he's like, okay, well, I have to go now.
Deuces.
Bye. Oh, he then gets a call from Marge that she is all relaxed up and ready to come home, and she'd love to be picked up from the train station in 1 hour, and hey, maybe he should bring the kids. So Homer is now trying to come up with a good enough excuse to explain to Marge that he lost their baby. I love when he says, he's talking to himself about ideas, and he's like, maybe I'll tell her, oh, Maggie was really young. We really weren't that attached.
We really weren't that attached to her.
Or one day they're babies, the next they're out on their own.
For the record, though, like, when she calls saying in 1 hour, I'm like, again, it's one of those things you don't really notice as a kid, but that made me feel so pressured for Homer in that moment. Like, just in 1 hour, I want you here with all the kids. And I just thought, oh my God, there's no way this can work out. And I know it does. I've seen this episode numerous times, but just the thought of
Spoiler alert.
Getting everything together in 1 hour, I was just like, oh my God, my heart's beating right now.
Especially when that 1 hour TV time takes about 3.5 minutes of real time. This is very close to the end of the episode at this point.
I don't even think it takes 3.5 minutes in the episode.
It very well might not. We get a scene where Wiggum has actually found Maggie. She's sleeping up on top of the roof, and they're like talking her down as if she's a potential jumper.
To be fair, that was like an ice cream store, wasn't it? And the top of the roof was like a ice cream cone in the shape of a face, and the ice cream was like blue, tall hair looking, so it looked like Marge. That's why Maggie was up there.
It was another thing that she was chasing, trying to get to Marge, is why she was there. You're totally right. Wiggum gets her down and takes her to the Simpson home, where Homer answers the door. And I love this exchange. Wiggum's like, did you call about a missing baby? And Homer's like, yeah. Did you describe her? Well, she's small and a girl. And then Wiggum's like, yep, that's her. Here you go.
He tries to arrest Homer.
Yeah, originally he's going to get charged with 3 different crimes, but then after a short exchange, he's just like, these mistakes happen. I think that's a lot of paperwork.
After Homer's like, mwah, 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 thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's right, ladies. I make kissy noises.
We then get to the train station, and there's this beautiful scene where when Marge is pulling up, she's holding a picture of her family up to the window, and when she pulls the picture down, her real-life family is in the same exact pose, only Homer looks like he is about dead. He looks like this short experience of having to parent without her literally almost killed him.
They all did. Bart and Lisa had bags under their eyes from staying with Patty and Selma. They all look completely distraught.
Marge is clearly the glue that keeps this family together.
Exactly.
And finally, we close on a scene with Marge and Homer in bed discussing the weekend and discussing that Homer is going to help out more in the future. And then the camera shot pans out and you actually see all of the Simpsons are in this bed, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie included. Bart speaks up saying, Mom, you've got nothing to worry about. Let's try to get some shut-eye. And they all go to bed.
Maggie being the last one to... Everyone closed their eyes instantly, but Maggie slowly closes her eyes.
Yeah, she blinks a few times until we screen to black. It's actually kind of a fun close.
For some reason that I really liked that they did that with Maggie at the end. She was finally feeling at peace for that little moment. Which again, she's the smartest one, so
she is. But for now, Rich, did you have anything else that you wanted to say about Homer Alone?
The only thing I want to point out is from my guidebook, The Simpsons: A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family. They point out there's a man at a lube shop where Maggie's wandering around looking for Marge. She goes by a lube shop. Sounds dirty. We're talking cars here, people. But there's a man who rudely turns down the lube shop guy who's dressed up, saying, "Don't touch me." According to my guidebook, it is the same man who gets a parking ticket validated by Ned in the Leftorium episode where Flanders failed, and that's where he didn't even make a purchase, where he goes, just stamp the ticket. But apparently it's the same towns guy, which we don't really ever see.
So he's just kind of a crabby dude that lives in Springfield.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed this episode watching it back as an adult. It's one that I do remember watching as a child, and I always enjoyed it, but I think there's a lot of jokes in this that I feel I appreciate more now that I've been married and just can kind of... I can understand all sides of this, whereas before I think I saw this from a different angle that didn't necessarily have as deep of a connection as it does now. So really good episode. Not necessarily the funniest episode, but it tells a great story, and I think it kind of explains the connection between the Simpsons family in a really, really strong way.
it did a good job of painting a better picture of what Marge means, because they don't really have a lot of those moments early on.
Yeah, she is very, very important. Absolutely. I think that's going to do it for Homer Alone, but we still have Bart the Lover to talk about. First, however, let's hear from our Podern family.
And break.
Howdy-ho, neighborinos, this is Goobs.
And I'm Ripkin.
And we are the Wrestle Nerds.
And you're listening to the best darn diddly review show of The Simpsons with our friend Miles and the WizKid.
The radioactive man and Fall-Out Boy of the podcast world.
And if you love their show, maybe you should check us out. We're the Wrestle Nerds, and you can find us on YouTube,
Twitter, and Instagram at Wrestle Nerds.
So on to Bart the Lover, which debuted on February 13th, 1992. This is another episode that had a shortened opening sequence, so there was no chalk gag, but the couch gag was a repeat from when the alien is sitting on the couch watching TV, and right before the Simpsons arrive, he jumps through a trapdoor. This one opens up on a in-classroom video about a world without zinc. Little Billy won't be able to go pick up his girlfriend because there's no car battery without zinc. There's also no rotary phones, which I guess would be an issue when that video is made. And finally, when he realizes the mistake he's made and he wants to end it all by shooting himself in the head, he won't be able to because it's zinc that makes that firing pin possible.
You know what I had a flashback to on that video? Was when we went to see a Riff Tracks and they did the thing about cylinders.
Fun with cylinders. Oh my god, every time I see cylinders now I laugh about that. If you've never seen Riff Tracks, you should look it up. It's a lot of fun. It's at Cinemark theaters like every couple months.
It's the Mystery Science Theater 3000 guys making fun of movies from
they are so good, so funny.
But that video was fantastic.
But what this is really all about, as the video is really boring to the kids, but it's very, very apparent that Miss Krabappel is very, very lonely. She wants anyone who's willing to stay after and talk more about zinc, or to talk more about anything, really. It's actually a really depressing opening. They're playing some really sad music in the background, and Edna actually is on her way home, stops at the Quickie Mart, and Apu even mentions he hasn't seen her since they doubled their prices. Among a couple other things, she gets a lottery ticket, and when Apu asks if she's still teaching, she says, "Hold on one moment." And when she gets 2 cherries and a bell, she replies, "Looks like at least one more day."
There's actually...
It's kind of sad.
But honestly, to me, there's a little bit of backwards optimism, and I don't mean pessimism by that. But I mean, that's kind of optimistic, because it's like it might only take one more day for her to win the lottery.
Yeah, but essentially the lottery is a tax on stupid people for the most part, so it's a depressing outlook on life.
A few of us have been known to play the Powerball when it gets to 400 million.
Oh, dude, obviously, yeah, when it gets like way, way up, I say have fun with it. And honestly, if it's something you enjoy doing, then fucking spend your dollar every week. If it's something that you are part of an office pool or whatever, all of those things are great. But if you are in any way, shape, or form planning your future around the idea of winning the lottery, then you, sir, are making poor choices.
Or making rich choices.
Someone's got to win, they say.
It's always poor people, too. Have you noticed that?
Maybe that's why, like, on average, lottery winners are, like, immediately broke, like, within years after winning their fortune, which baffles my mind, frankly. Like, I cannot imagine winning that much money and then losing it all, but it happens more often than not, which is just crazy in my mind.
I'm sorry if you're a listener that's won the lottery before, but if so, please give us money. But...
yeah, please sponsor our show.
But you never see those people being, like, middle-class citizens. Definitely not upper-class, because I don't think the upper class really plays. But you don't ever really hear too many stories. Every once in a while you hear one, but you never hear stories of, like, somebody that's doing okay winning the lottery. It's always a picture of somebody, like, coming out of their trailer be like, "I won the lottery. I can get new teeth."
Well, I think at a certain point there's a line where if you're intelligent, you don't announce to the world that you won the lottery. So I think that's why pretty much only really, really poor dumb people are
the Slack Jawed Yoko.
Exactly. I mean, it's a dick thing to say, but that's the truth. That's who you're going to see predominantly announcing to the world, like, "I won the lottery."
Hey, Brandine, get off the dang roof.
Exactly.
I can't stop.
Well, when it rains, it pours for Edna, because on the way home, she has car issues, and it turns out her ex put sugar in the gas tank again, which I thought would, like, ruin the car, to be honest.
Doesn't it, like, rust or eat away on the inside or something?
I'm not really sure the science of it all. It's just, I've heard bad, and she seems to be fine, so maybe it's not as bad of a joke as I realized. I thought it was a big damn deal.
But to be fair, that's also, like, in Beverly Hills Cop, they put bananas on tailpipes of cars and laugh about it all the time, which that actually ruins your fucking car.
You fell for the banana in a tailpipe? I love that movie. All three of them, honestly. I even love the stupid one that takes place in the Wonder World. Yes, oh my god, I love that shit. It's so bad, but it's so much fun.
All those movies are fun, like you said.
Yeah. Edna is having a rough time, but she sees an ad in one of the magazines she's bought for a personal ad. So she decides she might do it on a whim, and then she kind of breaks down as if she's trying to do it all lightheartedly, and she like completely breaks down. Is like, I need a man.
One of the things I found interesting is she's flipping through articles in that magazine before she finds that one. One of the article titles is "We Talk with J.D. Salinger," which is actually really funny because J.D. Salinger, famed author, Catcher in the Rye, he's known for being a hermit or a recluse, if you will. So, like, he's known for not talking to people. Like, he never wanted to be in interviews or anything like that. So I thought it was really funny that, like, this little tiny magazine is like, "We talk with J.D. Salinger," because that just doesn't happen. Like, again, smart writing.
I didn't catch that. Yeah, that's very cool. The next day at school, everyone is in the auditorium for an assembly, and Principal Skinner can't get any control of the room. He starts out by being like, "I can wait just as long as you can," and everybody's like, "Yeah, that's fine, we'll just keep doing our thing then." So he finally kind of screams at them all to shut up. But the assembly they get is actually pretty rad. They get a yo-yo stunt team perform, and everybody is infatuated with it. Like, some of them are saying, like, I think Bart's like, "Wow, they must be millionaires." And Nelson's like, "I bet they get all the girls," which is hilarious.
Did you ever have a yo-yo assembly when you were in, like, middle school? Because I did.
I did not have a yo-yo assembly, but I was going to bring this up. There was a fad in middle school that
They came back big when we were in
I was
school.
way into yo-yos. And honestly, I picked one up a couple weeks ago, and I can still do a couple of pretty cool things. Like, I'm nowhere near as good as I used to be, but, like, I'm still all right. And yo-yos were a big part of my middle school. Like, we got really into it. And actually, I've got a story to tell that kind of parallels this episode a little bit, but I'll wait till we get there.
Man, I just remember that they came back and they got really expensive. I mean, this is 1992 in The Simpsons. We're talking 98 for us. But they came.
The most expensive yo-yo I bought was like $30 or $35, and I had six yo-yos.
They had like $40 to $60 ones.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm just saying the most expensive one I want. It was is it the Angry Bumblebee? I think it was called.
Oh my god! When you just said that, like I saw it in my head when you said it. It might not be the Angry Bumblebee, but when you said Bumblebee, it like painted.
It's definitely Bumblebee. Yeah. Something Bumblebee.
It was like
and
they were
those things would sleep for hours. Yeah.
It's one of my good friends from middle school. He was one of my best friends in high school, Danny. His dad owned a little tiny toy store, and he got discounts on that. So we would always be going to him to buy yo-yos from him. And, like, we'd be having a basketball game where we had the lights out before the game, and we'd just be, like, trying to calm down. And people would bring in their yo-yos that lit up and be, like, doing tricks in the dark with them. And it was just, I mean, it was fun, but, I mean, we had that craze come back. I just remember it blew up for a few years again in middle school.
I never got crazy good, but I could do like the cradle maneuver where you rock it back rock the cradle. I could do some of the some of the classics. I could do a few of the classics. I could show Michael I could definitely keep up with Michelangelo. I always actually would imitate that whenever I was a kid, long before I ever learned how to actually yo-yo. I had a yo-yo, and all I would ever do with it was pretend to be Michelangelo and like spin it around and yell around the world.
I remember when that preview came out for Ninja Turtles 2, and you saw that in the preview, and it was like, I want to do that all the time to everybody.
Forever. Yeah, absolutely. I also really love that exchange, though, during the assembly with Miss Hoover and Miss Krabappel, because Miss Hoover is like, I'm really questioning the educational value of this, and Krabappel's all just like, this will probably be one of their highlight memories in their sad lives pumping gas for a living. And it's just like, goddamn, that's dark.
Did you notice that they were, in that exact moment, they were both smoking in the auditorium with a sign above their heads that said, "No smoking."
Well, immediately all of the kids are just infatuated with yo-yos, much like my school, and it sounds like yours as well was whenever it was when I was in like 6th grade, for what that's worth.
I thought it was like 7th or 8th grade for me, but
mine was, it started in 6th, it probably lingered into 7th, but it was definitely 6th grade for me.
It's because the yo-yo people were on a world tour.
Yeah, it just took a while to get to school first. Yeah, exactly. I actually like the line, somebody's like, "I wonder how much those cost," and Bart's like, "I don't care, I want one."
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah, exactly. Simpsons did it. The yo-yo stunt team was like kind of doing a meet and greet with everybody afterwards, and Lisa gets an autograph from Sparkle, the female yo-yo trickster. And I love, there's like, "That's not you." And she's like, "Yeah, that was the old Sparkle. I'll sign it anyway." And then the manager who introduced him and was all nice and friendly at first is like being a total ass and is like, "You guys get in the car. It's time to go." And they like pack him into this tiny little work truck where they're all crammed in. The next day, everyone at Bart's school has a yo-yo, and they're all doing tricks, but there's one person that seems to be getting it down more than any other, and that's Bart Simpson. He is doing tricks that others can't, and he always has a crowd, showing off what he can do.
I think you overtalked the point where they were at home the night before, and Marge and Homer were talking about yo-yos, and Marge said, she said, "Name one person who got rich off doing yo-yo tricks."
Yeah, Homer was actually basically saying they were going to bank off of Bart and he was going to make them millionaires. And you're right, Marge was like, "Name one person that got rich doing yo-yo tricks." I love as Homer's thing.
He named a whole bunch of people, but the first one made me crack up hysterically.
Yeah, he goes, "Donald Trump? No, that's not it. Arnold Palmer? No. Bill Cosby? No. No!"
The Trump one made me laugh hysterically because that sounds like something that he should be rich for.
Obviously now that he's president, it's just hilarious how many stories you hear about Trump when he was younger.
But yeah, in 1992, I know Trump had built his wealth or whatnot. I don't know the exact timeline because I really don't care. But it's just like, as a kid, like, you don't know who Donald Trump is in 1992. You have no idea. And it's just weird going back now and seeing how much he's actually referenced, even in earlier episodes. It's like, well, I guess he'd be a prominent figure in the business world, so that's why they mention him. But it's just, you don't realize this as a kid.
Well, actually, if you were a wrestling fan as a kid and you watched WrestleMania 4 or 5, I know it was 2 back-to-back. I believe it was 4 or 5. It may have been 5 or 6. But regardless, that was actually hosted at Trump Towers, and Trump sat front row, and they actually made a big deal introducing him. So as a wrestling fan, I was at least moderately aware of who Trump was, but I didn't really get it. You know what I mean? I just knew he was some rich guy who had a building where he let Vince McMahon run WrestleMania.
So again, nobody knew who he was in 92.
Hey man, Hulkamania was running wild in 92, brother. So there was a lot of wrestling fans.
I'll give a little credit there. I knew Hulkamania.
Yeah, like that was at the height. That was like one of them was when Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan faced off, which was like the biggest deal back then, even though it was an awful match. But just those names on the banner, it looked good on a fucking poster, let's say that for sure. Regardless, yo-yos are running wild, much like Hulkamania was back then. And it's actually getting on Miss Krabappel's nerve. She's tired of the yo-yo questions and the yo-yo book reports and the essays on yo-yos, and she basically bans all yo-yo talk. I love when she's like, "Am I making myself clear?" And Bart chimes in, "Yo." It killed me. Well, Bart's not done with yo-yos, and he decides he's going to show off his new trick, but not everything goes right, and unfortunately, we suffer the tragic loss of both Stinky and Wrinkles, the beloved classroom fish.
They've been in every episode of the show, and it's sad to see them go already.
I can't believe The Simpsons killed off 2 mainstream characters like that, frankly. I think it's a bold move. But I respect them for doing it.
I mean, how many fish in Springfield have only 2 eyes?
Right? Bart's classic reaction. I didn't do it. I love that.
I laughed when he said that. I love that.
Oh, every single time. And Bart's in trouble. He is having a conversation with Edna Krabappel after class, and I love when actually Edna asks Bart straight up, Bart, if you were in my position, would you give the yo-yo back? And Bart has this fantasy where he's like towering over her and having the yo-yo go down and saying, here you go. Oh, just kidding. Here you go.
Pulling it
just
up while she
kidding.
reaches for it every time.
So needless to say, she takes the yo-yo and puts it in her drawer.
And then we get the scene where Edna gets to go on a great date. Just a fantastic, absolute, unbelievably great date. Love of her
Well, I
life.
mean, did you see that guy's picture? He looked like a hunk.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was Jasper. That's right, Jasper, the old fucker that lives with Grandpa Simpson.
Hey, he may have a little bit of snow on the roof, but he still, he forgot the rest of it.
It also makes me think of, I almost said fungus. What's the shit? Dandruff. He might have fungus too. I mean, you don't know what's between those toes. He's old. Shout out to old people.
We know you're listening if you can hear us.
Hey, when The Simpsons started, all those old people were like in the prime of their lives, so they could very well be listening right now.
Age is just a state of mind, baby. It's all good.
And a number on a birth certificate.
Yeah, that too. Edna's going on bad dates and she's fed up, and Bart is annoyed because he got his yo-yo confiscated and he's on a month's detention. So Edna is basically just coming up with random chores for him to do. I think at first he's like doing the plumbing in the sink, and he actually pulls a Malibu Stacy head and is like, this is the problem. I thought that was actually really funny.
I kind of need Bart's help right now, honestly.
You're having some plumbing issues, yeah.
In my kitchen here. But for the record, though, like 1 month's detention, like, is that really necessary for something like that? Like, Bart felt bad immediately when he did it, and it's not like he's learning a lesson from this. He gets detention all the time. Is 1 month, it seems like a huge stretch to me.
It seems like a pretty steep punishment, but it makes for this episode to be a little bit more justified, because I think he's frustrated at how extreme the punishment was, and that leads into what he's about to do.
Well, I think it's reflective of how Krabappel's feeling, too. Like, she's so distraught, and, like, she's basically, I mean, she's depressed but numb at the same time. So it's just like, she doesn't care. So it's like, fuck it, you're getting a month's detention. But that also gives the story long enough for Bart to see how she's reacting while he's doing what he's doing in this episode. If it was only a week or two,
it wouldn't be long enough.
Yeah, he wouldn't know what she's doing, like, as he's playing this prank on her, essentially.
Definitely. But while Bart's on his detention, Miss Hoover comes in and announces they're having happy hour in the teacher's lounge. So Krabappel's gone. She's out of there. And Bart decides he's going to take this opportunity to get his yo-yo back. And this is where I need to stop and tell a real quick story. Because when I was in 6th grade, I got my yo-yo confiscated. And there is this one bitch teacher. I don't even remember her name, but I really fucking hated her. And that's probably just totally me being a shit kid, but I remember this was the teacher that everybody hated. So, myself and a lot of my friends got our yo-yo confiscated, and I decided that during lunch, I would actually sneak into her classroom, sneak into her drawer, which I actually had to pick the lock. It was in the old school classrooms where you could use a credit card and open the door even when they were locked. I don't know if any of you had that at your schools, but it was what we could do to slide it behind and open it. So I snuck into her classroom and I got myself and all of my friends' yo-yos back. And then we did a 3-card Monty switch for the rest of the day. Because immediately after that, she was suspect and she started going after everybody. Because this was earlier in the day that she took them. So, like, basically the teachers...
Wait,
like,
so it was the same day that she took him that you got him back?
Yes, yeah. That same day she took him, I got him back. And so she's super suspect, obviously. But we managed to pass them around all day long, just passing them from person to person. And they literally came and pulled all of us out of class at various times of the day, trying to figure out who snuck into the room. And they were like searching our lockers, searching our backpacks, searching everything. And by miracle, we just managed to keep passing these things like hot potato style enough around that we stayed ahead of them the entire day and we got our fucking yo-yos back. I feel comfortable that I'm past the statute of limitation on that I'm probably not going to get detention. So I feel okay telling this story. But this episode absolutely, like, it brought an adrenaline rush because frankly, it was one of the coolest fucking feelings I ever had of getting away with crime. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but the fact that I pulled off this like heist, I felt it really did. It felt like a fucking heist. Like if you play Payday or even Grand Theft Auto, you know exactly what I fucking mean.
Payday.
And it was glorious, sir. It was absolutely Bobby Roode glorious. So anyway,
Miles the Daredevil.
In addition to getting his yo-yo back, Bart also notices in Edna's drawer a personal ad that she had posted in the newspaper. It actually was entitled 1 + 1 = 2. A recently divorced 4th grade teacher wishes to meet a man, age 18 to 60. Good lord.
I'll take anything.
Object, save me.
Which just makes you feel even more sad. Like, oh my god.
It's a really depressing letter. I mean, this is internet dating before internet dating was a thing. And this is not like as commonly as accepted as internet dating is. I mean, I'm out of the game. I don't really get it. But I know you've used things like Tinder and what have you used? Have you used like Match or MyCupid or whatever the fuck
I won't ever pay for it. Matches. I've used OkCupid. There's a newer one called Happen that's pretty cool, actually, where it shows people that have the app that like go to the same places as you, maybe not at the same times, but it literally shows you how many times you cross paths with certain people, which can be really, really fucking creepy too.
I was about to say the stalkerish nature of dating just baffles my mind. Like, and a big part of me is glad I got out of the game before all that shit came to be, frankly. But it also seems like you guys are technologically connecting genitals in ways that no one ever has before, which is fascinating.
Good thing you can get computer aids.
I see what you did there. Well, Bart sees this opportunity as a chance at revenge, at getting stuck in a month's detention. So he responds to Edna's personal ad. He says, "Dear Edna, I've never answered a personal ad before, but I found yours irresistible." He basically introduces himself as Woodrow, a man who likes holding hands, dinner by firelight, and oh yeah, he just so happens to hate yo-yos.
Bart knows just what buttons to push.
He gets it. Back at the Simpsons' home, however, we get to our B storyline.
Which I really like the B storyline in this episode a lot, actually.
I do too. It's really, really good. It involves Homer, which is a big help. And basically, Santa's little helper needs a doghouse, they determine. Marge suggests that they go and buy one for about $50, but Homer laughs that off and basically blames Marge of being a sucker for the doghouse lobbyists that are selling her on things they don't need while he could just go build one.
Which, to be fair, I think just buying the materials to build a doghouse yourself would have to cost at least $50.
It'd be damn close. That's the thing, is a lot of times, I mean, depending on what you're going for, if you want to build something really elaborate, you can get ahead, but if you're going for basic, it's going to be tough. I fucking love when Homer, quote-unquote, draws the blueprints to explain it to Marge, which is the ultimate case of mansplaining right there. Because, for what it's worth, blueprints don't include a smiley little sun.
Or a shittily drawn house, to be fair. Or a chimney on the doghouse with smoke coming out of it.
But Homer will walk Marge through it so she's not confused. Meanwhile, Bart is getting really into this correspondence with Edna. He also gets a response from Edna, and it includes a little picture and a somewhat risque pose from Teacher. He actually has a really funny line when he first gets that. He's like, you've got a date with the Xerox machine. Back to the B line, and I think we'll both agree this is where it gets really good. We're at the Flanders dinner table, and when asked, I believe it was Rod or Todd, one of those two, like very much like Patty and Selma. I often get those two confused, but one of the twins, essentially, when offered vegetables, says, "Hell no. I don't want any damn vegetables."
Which, if you think about a Flanders saying that, it's like so, like, what the fuck? He says it so sweetly, too.
This atrocity earns this boy no Bible stories tonight, and he goes off to bed disappointed. Maude asks Ned if maybe he's not being a little bit harsh, and I love when Ned's like, "You knew I had a temper when you married me, honey."
What I like is when they first go to that scene, they're sitting at the table, and Ned's telling this story about how there's a man that gave him $1 and asked for change at the leftorium, and he gave the man 3 quarters. And then later, when he realized he had messed up,
it took him all day to chase him down.
It took him all day to find the guy to give him the last quarter, which it comes into play immediately after this scene, because then it goes into Reverend Lovejoy's home.
My absolute favorite scene in the entire episode.
Reverend Lovejoy answers, and he knows it's Ned, and he goes, "Is this the quarter story again?" Which, if you paid attention at the end of the conversation, when Ned says it's actually because his kids were swearing, or one of his children were swearing, when he hangs up the phone, he goes, "Damn you, Flanders."
That's actually my favorite line, absolute. So yeah,
the Reverend was saying that.
The Reverend is getting a call because Ned's having a crisis where his kids are swearing, and he ends the call by swearing at Flanders. That absolutely killed me.
That's one of the great things, like the duality of Reverend Lovejoy. Like he's a very interesting character. All of them are, but you catch the little, especially with the whole religion thing behind it. It just has such a more meaningful meaning, basically.
Well, the humor that lies in him being the priest, but Flanders being far more religious than him is just
and it getting under his skin.
Bottomlessly funny. Yeah, absolutely. So this conversation with the Reverend actually gets Ned on a hunt to find the bad influence that has caused his child to curse. He is observing his kid watching TV and playing with his brother and doing all sorts of activities and determining that none of these things are what has caused this issue.
Well, actually, earlier in the episode, before the dinner table scene, you actually saw Rod or Todd, whichever one it was, in the backyard, opposite where Homer was in the backyard, trying to build Santa's little helper's new doghouse. And while Homer was building it, he used the exact 2 swear words that was reiterated later on in the dinner table scene. So the audience... the audience already knows where it's coming from. And then, again, Homer here in a second is going to be in the backyard doing the same thing and kicking the doghouse and breaking it apart because he's just distraught and he's swearing basically in earshot of the Flanders kids.
Ned actually comes over to talk to Homer about this issue, and I love Homer's first response is like, if this is about your camcorder, I already told you, I lost it. But then when Flanders tells him it's about his swearing, Homer's like, oh, come on, Ned, I never complain about your mustache.
Hold up, now this is my favorite part in this episode. Not the mustache part, but exactly what Flanders says to Homer when he walks over there. And I wrote it down and then realized after I wrote it down, it's in my companion guidebook here. So I'm going to use the companion guidebook because it's written much neater than mine is. But the conversation Ned has with Homer is fucking hilarious. Ned walks up to Homer and he goes, "Look, Homer, all of us pull a few boners now and then, go off half-cocked, make asses of ourselves. So I don't want to be hard on you, but I just wish you wouldn't curse in front of my boys." And that whole thing is just, like, again, it's something that you catch little parts when you're a kid, but being older, it's just like, oh my god, that entire little paragraph was just terribly seductive. Like, in the worst way possible, and he doesn't even realize it. It was just fantastic.
It goes to, like, him being so innocent, he doesn't even get that he's saying these awful things. It's great.
Talking about cocks too much, Ned. Calm down.
Just a little bit too much cock.
That's what she would not say, probably.
While all this is happening, Bart is actually trying to figure out a response to his now developing prank where he's developing correspondence with Edna Krabappel, pretending to be a man that she'd be interested in dating. He actually asked Lisa, if I used up all my A material writing a letter to a girl, what should I write in my second letter? Lisa jumps to the conclusion that he obviously has a crush and doesn't realize the extent of what Bart's really asking. And neither does Marge, because Marge actually lends their love letters that were written between Homer and Marge as inspiration for Bart, which there's one drunken letter that Homer has written to Marge where halfway through he starts bitching about an overpriced pretzel. And
but it gets to the point where it's like he's literally writing stuff you can't understand, and you hear Homer's voice reading the postcard where he hits the point where he's so drunk he's jumbling words, basically.
And it's really funny because Bart actually is like, oh, wow, I never knew there'd be this side of Homer before.
And that's where Homer ends the postcard. Everyone will remember this once it's said, but it's like, you've got a butt that won't quit.
Yeah. Which comes into play here shortly, because that's exactly what...
The butt?
A butt that won't quit, because that's exactly what Bart writes back to Edna as Woodrow, referencing that picture she sent, saying that he could tell that she has a butt that won't quit.
She sent in some pretty racy pictures, too.
Yeah, there's no nudity, but it was definitely erotic. Homer goes to bed laughing at the idea that Flanders thinks that he swears too much. So much so that he shares that thought with Marge, thinking she'll laugh too. But instead, Marge is like, well, Homer, maybe you do swear too much. Homer says that he's too old for change, and Marge is like, that's ridiculous, and convinces him it's not too late, and talks, I think it was her uncle possibly, or maybe her father, that used a swear jar.
No, she said her father. I had an issue with that, actually.
Okay.
It's Marge uses a story about her dad, I believe, and about how he was a baby photographer.
He almost lost his job because of too much swearing.
I brought this up before. We know he's a flight attendant in later seasons, so he must have had a lot of different jobs. There's been a very unclear picture of Marge's father through the last season, about where we see a glimpse of him. I talked about this a few weeks ago, where he's like in the Way We Was episode, the prom episode for Marge and Homer, where he's fatting on the couch, but in later seasons we see him with blue-colored hair as a skinny flight attendant.
Well, in that last flashback, he wasn't there at all.
Yeah, we talked about that as well. So it's like there's a very unclear picture of Marge's father so far through the series.
Definitely. But regardless, they do agree upon a swear jar, and almost instantly Homer starts having questions. And I love this dirty little line they have where Homer's saying things like, well, is it okay if I curse if I hit myself with a hammer? No. Well, what if I trip and fall? No. What if I hurt myself at work? What if I mess up? All these things, and Marge is basically saying no, no, no. But then Homer asks, what about when we're snuggling? And Marge kind of gets a funny little look and says, oh, well, that would be okay, which basically means Marge likes the dirty talk, sir.
Dirty talk. Again, showing that Homer is probably very good at certain things he does when they're alone that we don't see. And I also really think it's kind of romantic that Homer has to ask her, like, well, what if I'm at work and I say it? Like, he cares so much about what she thinks and what she's saying that, as selfish as he is as well, like, he's asking when he's by himself at work, which if I was at work and swore, I just wouldn't admit that I swore.
Homer's oddly honest at times about things like that. Like for someone he'll be purposely deceptive. Like when it comes to his day-to-day routine, he doesn't keep secrets from Marge.
Exactly, which I thought that was kind of a sweet moment, and really quick too.
Yeah, very cool.
Then we get a great montage of the swear jar filling up, which is fucking hilarious.
Oh, dude, it fills up so fast. And there's a lot of things that actually happen to him, too. I mean, like, he accidentally gives a 20 at church.
Bart goes, Dad, that was a 20. And he goes, and then it cuts away before he swears.
There was also a bowling pin that just wouldn't quite fall over. And then, of course, the worst of everything is earlier in that scene with Flanders, whenever he made the comment about his mustache, Flanders actually agreed to shave the mustache if Homer would quit swearing. And Ned shows up while Homer's taking out the trash and is like, wow, Homer, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I got booked in a commercial the day after I cut off the cookie crumb holder or whatever it was.
And then wasn't he commenting because he kept looking through his mail going, these residual checks are great, or whatever it was he said.
They're so big it's almost criminal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's hilarious.
There's a couple more, but it got to the point where there were so fast and so many, it got hard to keep track of all of them, even with the ability to pause and rewatch.
The swear jar fills up so fast, and a couple other things happen. At one point, he's napping on the hammock, and a beehive falls on him. I feel like that would have been an okay time to swear, personally. That would have sucked. Oh, and he also doesn't put a door on the doghouse. But the moment he realizes it, Marge and Lisa show up and have bought him a brand new doghouse from the store that he doesn't have to build. Whenever he asked about where they got the money, Marge responds, Homer, there is more than enough in the swear jar. We even had enough to get you a surprise. He looks inside to see it. At first he's disappointed because he was like, oh, Maggie. And Marge is like, no, behind Maggie. And he gets a 6-pack of Duff. And I love the line,
Peter,
how did you know?
How did you know? Wait, let me check. That might have been an instance where I yelled into the mic.
That whole scene was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was. I think we skipped over a little bit though, because wasn't there another scene or two with Mrs. K in the classroom.
There was actually a lot going on with Bart and Krabappel at this point. So their correspondence is going pretty well and progressing forward to the point where she wants a picture. So Bart actually gets a photo of Gordie Howe, a Canadian hockey player, and puts that in as the image of Woodrow. They get to the point, though, where they actually set a date to meet. And they agree that they'll go to the Gilded Truffle, which we know as the fanciest restaurant in all of Springfield, at 8 p.m. Bart walks by and sees Edna happy and waiting for her date, and laughs to himself as he walks in to go see the movie Ernest Needs a Kidney.
A classic.
An absolute classic. But when he's on his way out, 2 hours or so later, he walks by the Gilded Truffle again and realizes that Edna is heartbroken. And he says himself he can't help but to feel partially responsible, which is, of course, ridiculous because he made this entire thing happen. And he feels bad about it.
To try to take Bart's side, to play devil's advocate here for a second, Springfield doesn't seem like it's that big of a city a lot of times in the earlier seasons. It gets a little bit bigger as it goes on, but it seems like everybody pretty much knows everybody in the town. There's not anybody that's like hidden that you don't see that often. And it's like you think somebody with quote unquote Woodrow's personality and the way he looks, you think that like she would probably already know where he's at or if he existed at all, more so. But Edna she's a romantic at heart, even though she's a dirty slut.
She's a romantic slut.
Every time she hooks up with somebody, it's like she's never even met him before. I mean, she does it with Skinner pretty much, which she does know him, but comic book guy, Ned eventually before...
They actually have a budding relationship, though.
But yeah, you think she would be more aware of the gentleman around town.
She's heartbroken regardless, and Bart does, in fact, feel bad. And actually, at the next day at detention, Bart's actually kind of trying to cheer up just a little bit, like suggesting maybe some of the other guys. And I love, she's like, what about Principal Skinner? And she basically says that he can't get permission from his mommy to go out and play.
Wasn't that so foreshadowing? Like,
oh, big time.
She knows the issue with Skinner, but that becomes an issue after they start dating years down the road.
That's like the reason they eventually break up is essentially his mom comes in between them.
Seymour!
The coach, I don't remember his name, but he's an alcoholic as proposed by her doing the gulp, 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 gulp thing, hand motion. And I actually really like, what about groundskeeper Willie? And she kind of scoffs and is like, I won't even tell you what he's into. Which... Go Willie. You kinky fuck. Bart basically decides he needs to fess up. He tells his parents what's going on. And I actually love this exchange between Homer and Marge, because Homer at first is like, you need to go up to your teacher tomorrow and just tell her the truth. And Marge is like, hell no, that would humiliate her.
Yeah, kind of an opposite. It's like a role reversal almost for a second there. But except for what Homer says.
Yeah, as I say, but then Homer comes back and is like, oh, I was just saying that because I thought that's what you'd want me to say. Lisa actually has the idea that we should write another letter explaining why we're leaving so we don't leave her brokenhearted. And they actually... Homer claims that sensitive letter writing is his specialty, but it doesn't come out so well when he's basically like, sorry, babe, it's Dumpsville for you.
He goes, dear baby, welcome to Dumpsville. Population you. And Homer has a lot of great lines here when they actually start writing a real letter.
Which the whole family has kind of like come together to try to like jointly write this thing at this point.
Yeah, which is actually a very tender moment. Like it's the family coming together to help with an issue at hand.
Except for Homer's one and only suggestion is he keeps saying that they should just write 3 simple words. I am gay.
They go, how do we end it? And then that's what Homer says, 3 simple words. I am gay.
For the last time, Homer, we're not using that.
I like later when they do it again. they're writing a little bit more. And then Homer goes, P.S. I am gay. But it was a nice moment. Like it was better than I remembered it being.
It was mostly Lisa and Marge, but overall the letter worked. It made
no, the very last line was Homer's actually. And I don't remember what it was, but it was actually like quite a romantic
Every
letter.
time the wind blows, I will hear the word Edna, or I will hear the name Edna, I think is what it was. Something of that nature.
Oh, I actually have the full letter here in my guidebook. I didn't realize that till just now. Dearest Edna, I must leave you. Why? I cannot say. Where? You cannot know. How I will get there?
I have not
I haven't
decided
decided yet. But one thing I can tell you. Anytime I hear the wind blow, it will whisper the name Edna. And so, let us part with a love that will echo through the ages. Woodrow. That was the echo through the ages part was Homer, I believe.
I thought his was the wind part, actually. But regardless, Homer did contribute. Everybody contributed to the letter.
They were all shocked at what Homer said.
And it did actually make Edna feel better, which is ultimately what it was meant to do. In fact, so much so that the next day, there's a really sweet moment when Bart's in detention, and Krabappel says, Bart, it's a lovely day outside. How would you like to have detention outside today? And Bart holds out his hand and says, it's a date. And they walk out together, which was just a really sweet, touching moment that kind of brought it around full circle.
You could tell that like the detention part was Bart didn't even give a crap about that part. Like he was just happy that Edna was happy.
Right. I think at this point Bart's just used to having detention. His school day is an extra hour compared to everybody else's. It's
like in Deadpool, what Ryan Reynolds is being tortured, and he has that quote at one point where they're saying they're going to torture him more, and he goes, "See, that's the thing with torture. There comes a point where you can't do anymore, so it really loses its threat." And that's kind of Bart in detention if you think about it. Like,
yeah, unless he's going to get suspended, like it's really not that big of a deal.
They can't do any more punishment to Bart, basically, where he feels actually threatened.
Absolutely.
Oh, what a sweet episode.
Yeah, this one was another one that was kind of, I mean, there were some funny moments, but this one was one of those more heartfelt episodes. And it was kind of fun because it was one of the first times we really got to meet Edna Krabappel's character in more detail. And they're getting to the point in the series where we're going to get those episodes for more and more characters. And the longer it goes, I think the more it may not be necessary for a character to get a full episode. But at this point, it's actually really, really fun to kind of get this almost side tale from the Simpsons universe.
Absolutely.
That does bring us to the end of the episode. Is there anything else that you or that book wants to mention about Bart the Lover?
My book pointed out that when Ned was looking at, he had a list of possible bad influences on his sons. And it was Todd. According to my book, Todd was the one that was swearing. But the possible people influencing him were bumper stickers, comic books, grandma, television, and brother were the possible ones. But I just thought bumper stickers got me. Which makes sense. There's some bad shit on bumper stickers sometimes. And the other thing was that the postcard that Bart read from Homer to Marge from back in the day, it was from the Duff Brewery in Capital City in 1978, and it actually said, "See the world's biggest pull tab," which is like, who fucking cares? It's a pull tab. Like, that's huge.
I like when they have all those little like crazy like sideshow attraction things from old TV shows. There was the show Doug was always really big on those. Like when they'd be on vacations, they'd always have these ridiculously like stupid side attractions.
I'm just glad I have this companion guidebook, man, because it always points out shit that's like so fast you don't even realize it's something you were supposed to be paying attention to.
It's been a useful friend for sure. I don't have anything else to add for Bart the Lover. Again, I think it's a great episode, but not a traditionally funny episode, and not a traditional Simpsons story. Again, the main character here very much is Miss Krabappel, and Homer has his fair shares, of course, with the B line, but it is the B story, not the A story. So I think that makes it stand out amongst the episodes we've watched so far, at least to some extent.
But you see why they had the B story in this one, because that's where all the humor came from.
Yeah, without the B story, it would have actually been a really sad, almost too mean of an episode.
Yeah.
Very much so. All right, man. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's show. Is there anything that you want to plug before we get out of here?
As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at @thewiz_kid23. And as always, please go over to our paid show, which is at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. And give us a follow on there. Comment about the episodes. Let us know what you love about it. We love feedback, positive or negative. If you fucking hate us, tell us. We'll ignore you because we're fucking awesome, but, still tell us.
Awesome. Way to piss off people. I love it. All right, I am at MrMostDaysOff pretty much everywhere on the internet. Other than that, we look forward to seeing you next week when we are going to have special guest, the Wrestle Nerds. Woo! to come and talk about Homer at the Bat and Separate Vocations.
Batter up.
We'll see you next week.